Once again, I find myself on the very opposite side of what the world always says is right. The world that we live in regards the movie Pocahontas, the animated movie, as a huge mistake and incredibly offensive for Disney to have ever made. I freaking love this movie, and I think it is not only not a mistake, it's one of the best movies Disney has ever done. And I'm sticking to it. So, here we're going to go down this winding path of me being incredibly controversial, and once again, it's the Philadelphia Whovian versus the world. So hello guys, welcome, or if you've already been to my channel before, welcome back. I am the Philadelphia Whovian. And for this video, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is a video about why I think the movie Pocahontas is a great film as well as a fantastic bit of animated, and Disney was just wonderful for making this movie. Okay, and before I begin, I'm gonna make it very clear to you guys. Okay, if you do not like Pocahontas, cool, fine, don't like Pocahontas, but hear me out first before you shut down and you just refuse to hear why I like this movie. Just hear me out first. Okay, I admit I've compiled a list of reasons that I have seen other people, give why it's a terrible movie, and I'm also going to confront them along the way. So I'm going to give you my reasons why I like it, and I'm going to sometimes confront why other people do not like it, but here's my argument towards that argument. So first, what makes the movie Pocahontas great is the animation to this movie is amazing. This has got to be some of the best animation that Disney has ever done. A lot of love clearly went into making this movie. The direction was awesome. The shots were awesome. The transitions from one scene to another was very, very good. And this has some of the best, if not the best, Disney songs that have ever been created. Ever. Seriously, the music in this is amazing. And I'm going to recommend, if you want to see Pocahontas again and you've not seen it for a long time, try and find the Pocahontas that includes the love song between Pocahontas and John Smith. It's called If I Never Knew You. If I Never Knew You has got to be one of the greatest love songs I've ever freaking heard. Oh my God. It's just so good. And again, I say before, a lot of love clearly went into this script. Why people just don't notice it, I do not understand. And the characters are very, very well developed, and I have to respect that so very much. Okay. It's also a movie that is perfectly paced, and the comedy is there, but it doesn't ever overshadow the narrative. Sometimes comedy can overshadow a narrative, sometimes comedy falls flat, but the comedy in this movie was very good, while at the same time not overshadowing the narrative. And there's my first complaint. I've got my complaints here that I'm, addressing. The first complaint I've heard about this movie is that it's dull, it's boring. I don't know what you're talking about. For those who believe that, I respect you, but I don't get it. And this is something I'm dealing with culture nowadays in general. I hear people say things are boring sometimes, and they're dull, even though they're action-packed and the scenes are very well paced. I think right now we as a culture need to start re-examining our idea of an attention span. What I mean by that is sometimes we get bored too easily because we have zero attention span. And I'm not trying to criticize you who say this, but I'm just really advising you heavily. If you think this is a dull and boring film, you need to start learning to develop your attention span to a longer range and not needing to have something jump out at you every few seconds to keep your attention going. You need to start enhancing your attention span. That's not me criticizing you. I'm just pointing out something that will help you in the long run. Now comes the criticism. The main criticism to this is it's not historically accurate. Here's my reply back. I've got about maybe 2 or 3 main reactions to that. 1, this is a children's film. What the heck are you doing going to a Disney movie for historic accuracy? It's called being a grown-up. It's called being an adult or independent. Take your life into your own hands and look up the history yourself. After seeing this movie, look up the history yourself and enlighten yourself. And there are plenty of movies I've seen before that were completely historically inaccurate or had inaccurate things to them, and no one pitched a fit. Nobody did. No one pitched the fit that when it came to Braveheart, there are many inaccuracies to the movie Braveheart, in that the costume designer didn't even realize the Scots did not wear kilts at that time. It was like 3 centuries later, after Braveheart took place, that there were kilts. And also, one of my favorite Shakespeare plays is Macbeth by William Shakespeare. Of course, I was redundant. Of course, one of my Shakespeare plays was written by Shakespeare. I'm sorry, redundancy. But one of my favorite is Macbeth. I love Macbeth. Many people like Macbeth. It's one of the most popular, fully, consistently trotted out Shakespeare plays. Like almost every couple of years, you see Macbeth being done by somebody. Macbeth, the play, is completely historically inaccurate to the real Macbeth. The real Macbeth was actually said to be a great leader and a nice guy, and people loved him. And he defeated Duncan on the battlefield fair and square. So, okay. I know you're thinking, well, Shakespeare was written for a different time period where he did appease certain masses. Yes, he did. But if you are still allowing one historic inaccuracy in one place, and you understand you have to be responsible and look that history up yourself, you can't do that in a children's film. You can't. And also, you're thinking, oh, well, we're teaching children the wrong story about Pocahontas. As a child, that's when I saw Pocahontas. I loved it. And you know what my first impulse was to do? Is this was the movie that inspired me to look up the real Pocahontas and find out what really happened to her. As a child, I had the impulse to do that. And I'm no enlightened person. I was quite, mentally I wasn't the best at anything when I was a kid or an adult. Mentally, I was pretty weak. But this movie inspired me to learn about this real woman who really did exist. And that's what you're missing about this film. This is a film that's meant to introduce children into Pocahontas and make them curious about her, and then look up the real person and find out what she was really like. And that brings me to my second criticism to people who criticize this movie for being historically inaccurate. And this is what really makes me angry, because this is just all kinds of bad. It shows how people will criticize something without researching it themselves. When I looked up the history of this woman, Pocahontas, here's what I found. That there were conflicting accounts of what actually happened to her. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it now, but there was one story about her name being Minoka, and then Pocahontas meant she was a spoiled child, but Pocahontas meant she was the pleasing one. Some said she was 9 years old or 10 years old when she met John Smith. Others said she was 12 or 13. Some said she was sold for copper, and some said she was married to Kocoum and traded for copper. Others said she was kidnapped and taken aboard a ship. Others said that she did in fact give corn or help the natives, and she was kicked out of her tribe, and she went to live with John Smith, and she still loved him. Others described John as being a very old man. Others described John Smith as being quite young. And this is the beautiful thing about this. Have you ever seen the video here on YouTube about the messed up origins of Pocahontas by John Solo? Go and see it. You probably have seen it because he has thousands upon thousands of subscribers, and I only have a fair few. So you probably have seen his and not mine. But he was very good. He said he acknowledged that Pocahontas was a very good movie, even though it was historically inaccurate. But he pointed out something that's important to remember. That the history of Pocahontas has kept changing over the years because people have been discovering the settlers or the colonists, including John Smith, lied about a lot that happened when it came to Pocahontas. And because there's no actual account, no first-person account of Pocahontas' life. She never gives an account of her life because she was never given the power to. Her story was written by the victors who shaped her life, molded her life, and ultimately ruined her life many times over. It has now been recently discovered that she was most likely or not raped many times by the settlers and by the colonists who loved to go around and rape the native women because, they were ruthless and they were terrible people, as well as the fact that the natives back then, because it was hot in the summertime, they'd walk around naked. So oftentimes the colonists would rape them, and they had the superior weapons, so they would threaten the men, so the men could not defend the women. And Pocahontas was in that situation. They said now it's been recently discovered, more likely than not, she was kidnapped and held a prisoner, and her father could not save her because of the constant threat on his people, because the colonists had guns and they had superior weapons. And when she was forced to marry, her father sent her a necklace, which they say is what inspired the necklace we had here. Her father did send her a necklace, but that was all he could send her. He couldn't save her from anything. And she was probably forced into being married to John Rolfe, and she was forced into doing it because of, well, the idea of trading and the tobacco that was being grown there, and the idea of trying to make things look good for the queen or the king or whoever was in England. Either way, sorry, I don't know the royalty at that time, but over in England, the royalty heard reports about how bad the colonists were treating the natives. They were upset about this, and so John Rolfe, it's now become recently discovered, brought Pocahontas with him to Europe to show how well they're treating the natives, when it was all a big lie. They treated them horribly, they abused them, and most likely than not, they were raping a lot of the women and threatening or killing some of the men. Pocahontas was one of the many victims in this crisis and was probably raped many times. Do you really want your children to see that in a Disney movie? Seriously? Oh, and by the way, to show you just how inaccurate history has been proven to be in the time that this was made, it was still heavily circulated when this came out that Pocahontas was willing to sacrifice herself to save John Smith because Powhatan, Powhatan, I'll never pronounce it, I'm very bad at pronunciation names, her father, he was going to kill John Smith, but she put her head over his before he was going to be killed to protect him. It turns out recently, see, that was believed during the time this movie was made. I read the historical accounts. This was said to be true. It turned out now it's been a lie. John Smith lied about that, or he possibly lied about that to sell, for publicity, to give, a great account about his time when he was over in the Americas. He lied about that entire thing for propaganda. That iconic incident that was in history books when this came out, that this movie referenced, it turns out even now that was not real. Going back to what something my teacher back when I was in high school said very well. He said, when it comes to the history books, he said, when I'm teaching you guys history, understand, and he raised up a textbook. He said, when it comes to history, half of it is guessing, the other half is biased. Remember, the victors are the ones who tell the stories, and they give their own accounts usually of what that story was. So those of you who blame Pocahontas for not being historically accurate to all the history that was given at the time, you are casually forgetting that history, or you never bothered to research. I'll be clear. You probably never bothered to research that history was wrong in the time this was made, so you're mad about it for not being accurate to something that in itself was mostly inaccurate. Didn't research that, did you? No, you didn't. Unbelievable. So, gosh, that's just the amazing thing about that. And I even know one history teacher, she's in my family, she taught the story of the real Pocahontas. And she's like, I love the movie Pocahontas because I know it's a kid's film, it's got a lot of great messages in there, and on top of those messages, it has a fantastic heroine. And that's where I'm going to get into now, the character of Pocahontas herself. Get ready, it's going to be a long chapter of the video. Okay, Pocahontas. She is often mislabeled as a heroine who falls in love with the soonest white guy she meets, and she is just archetypal. I don't know what stupid things people come up with her. But Pocahontas, okay, first of all, I'm going to address the idea of she meets John Smith and falls in love with him immediately. No, first what you have to remember is she was speaking of, before she even met John, the idea of dreams, the importance of dreams, of choosing that sometimes the right path or the path you want to go down is not the easiest one, but you have to go down it anyway. The idea of looking forward to something, to a change, having a goal and wanting to progress forward. When she meets John Smith, when she first sees him, it's when he encounters Miko, and he's unlike anything she ever seen. And she's Oh, you think, oh, she's in love with the first white guy she meets. No, she's in love with, not even in love with him. She's curious about him. That's all it is. She's curious about him. And then when she sees how he treats Miko, and he's open to this new creature, she finds that endearing. But on top of all that, you have to understand what Pocahontas shows. When she first sees John Smith, she's not met with disdain. This person is different. Oh, he's ugly. No, she's curious about him, showing that's what we need to be when we encounter someone or something that is different than us. Not fear, not disdain, not it's different than me, so it must be inferior. No, something is different than me. Ooh, well, how curious. I am curious about that. That is a good thing, not a bad thing. I don't know why people mistake or misinterpret that so very much. Don't know why at all. Also, what did Pocahontas give us? Pocahontas is the first or one of the main, or maybe I'm just, I admit I have not seen Moana, or Mona, I don't know how to pronounce that. But she is a Disney princess and one of the few Disney princesses who in that time period of Disney films, who showed if you should have a lot of conversations with the man before you fall in love with him. Go back and look at it. Pocahontas and John Smith actually talk to one another. They fall in love with each other through their conversations. How often did we get Disney princesses who fell in love with the hero over time as they conversed with each other? Remember, Cinderella, I love Cinderella. I mean, I know people think she's anti-feminist. I don't agree with that. I'll talk about that later in a later video. But what conversation do we see her with the prince? How much? Boom. Sleeping Beauty. How long? They have like one conversation. One. That's it. That's it. And then we have Little Mermaid. Ariel had no voice the entire time. And then, yes, we have Beauty and the Beast, but she is trapped in the place with the Beast. She has no choice but to communicate with him. Pocahontas and John Smith, they have a choice to communicate with each other. They choose to, and they grow to love each other over time. That's a beautiful thing. And also, they argued with each other. Remember when he said about how the housing will build decent houses? She says, our houses are fine. And he says, you think that only because you don't know any better. And he calls her a savage. And she is upset about this, and she tries to get away from him. And then she reasons with him. That is a beautiful message, that talking with someone can help inspire them to change their minds and to enhance their person. That is a beautiful message to teach people, to speak with one another, but don't take crap. That's something little girls and little boys need to know. I don't have to take this person telling me I'm inferior just because I'm different than them or because I do things differently than them. But at the same time, believe that I could win someone over with conversation and gentle persuasion and with my words. That's what Pocahontas teaches. Respect yourself, but be willing to try and reason with someone. And also, these are two people who have an argument. That's important to notice. John Smith and Pocahontas had an argument with each other, and they rose above that argument and learned to understand each other and be patient with each other. That's what love needs to show, that there is life after an argument. There is love after an argument. In fact, maybe that argument is important to have so you two learn to love each other in the proper way. What Disney princess, how many Disney princesses before Pocahontas really showed us that, who had a choice to be around the hero? Not she was confined to be around the hero, but she had a choice to be around him and chose to be around him, and they evolved with each other and learned to respect each other in a great deal and learned to talk through an argument. When did we get that? Pocahontas gave us that. But let me guess, you didn't notice that because you were too busy insulting the movie without even bothering to think about the good messages first. Then another good message we have from this is sometimes ruthless people can be redeemed. I mean, not thoroughly ruthless. Okay, one criticism I get about this movie is the portrayal of John Smith and how John Smith was portrayed as this heroic guy and the real John Smith was absolutely awful. Yes, that is true. The real John Smith was absolutely awful from all the accounts we are now gathering about him. But here's the thing. That was in the movie. That people casually forget. The original John Smith, yes, we see him save Thomas in the very beginning, and that shows a heroic thing, but we see a John Smith who is savage in the sense that he is instinctively is fine with killing any Native Americans, any Indians or indigenous people, whatever term you want to call them. That's his first impulse, is no, Indians are just something, they're a problem to be just trampled over. He is perfectly fine, he's on board with just killing the Indians. So, yes, John Smith is not as ruthless as he was in real life and as terrible as he was in real life, but at the same time, John Smith, in the film, we see in the beginning he is disgusting and he is ruthless sometimes. The way he looks at Native Americans or indigenous people, he is just looks at them as a problem to be dealt with. They should all be killed. That's it. And Pocahontas, she helps him learn not to be like that. She literally improves his personality and teaches him how to improve himself and widen his perspective on life and on people and on the earth and the planet. Pocahontas shows that sometimes you can win people over by talking to them. The idea of talking instead of just fighting. Great message. You didn't notice that one either. And that is the meeting, when they finally do meet, it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in cinema, where Pocahontas is following him, she's curious about him, and he knows she's there, he hides behind a waterfall, she creeps along the stones, he jumps out intending to kill her, then she stands there and just looks at him, he stands there and looks at her, and they just look at each other. And they're on two different stones, and it shows how these two people are two different sets of people, but what happens? John Smith lowers his gun, and he steps into the water and tries to walk up to her. But she runs, because she knows she doesn't stupidly stand there. She knows he still might be dangerous. She is not blind. She is curious about him, but she doesn't let her brain fly out of the window completely. She doesn't let her curiosity make her lose all logic. She doesn't do that. She actually doesn't. She tries to keep a level head at all times. She does. And that's not easy when you're falling in love. But that scene is just so beautiful. It shows, here I was about to kill someone just because they were different than me. Just because I believe I have the right to kill this person who never did anything to me. I look at them like an animal, a savage. Then he sees her, and they give eye contact, and he realizes, this is a person. I was about to kill a woman, an innocent woman. He lowers his gun, and he goes up to her, curious, the way she was curious about him. The walls were coming down. And then we get another very good message where she said, with Just Around the River Bend, oh, great song. But she's like, should I choose the smoothest course, steady as the beating drum? Or do you still wait for me, dream giver? Just around the river bend, and she chooses to go down the difficult way of going instead of the smoothest course, acknowledging sometimes to pursue a dream, it's not going to be the easy path, it's going to be the hard path, but you gotta go down it anyway, because that's the right thing to do. It just is. Next, when it comes to another quote I absolutely love, when she does throw her head on top of John's to save him, she says, look at where the path of hatred has brought us. This woman is willing to sacrifice herself to protect this man, not only because she loves him, but because she wants to stop the fighting. And she wants to say, stand back and be logical. Let's try talking to each other. Look at where the path of hatred has taken us. Not the right path. This is not the right path to walk down. We need to have a higher way of being. And that is phenomenal. And here comes the most awesome, my favorite part about Pocahontas' story in this film. She and John Smith do not end up together at the very end. This is groundbreaking, not just for Disney, but for life in general when it comes to films that deal with romance. We have a movie where the hero and heroine do not end up together. He asks her to go back with him to England. She loves him, but she chooses to stay with her people. Why is this awesome? Because it is. One, it teaches girls, don't drop everything. Don't forget about your loyalty to your family, to your people, just for a guy. And same thing with men. You don't have to leave your entire family behind. This is just for a girl. You don't. Sometimes you have to make the right decision is the hard one. It's not easy. Sometimes you got to choose the stronger path over the path you want to choose internally. But it shows a loyalty on Pocahontas' part. Don't drop everything just because you fell in love. Don't abandon everything. Stay with them and support them. That is incredible. And this shows you that there is life after a romance that did not work out. One of the greatest messages that Disney has ever done. Ever. Because that's something girls need to see and boys need to see. They need to see that just because that relationship did not work out or we were separated for one reason or another, I can still go on and have a life. Because that's exactly what Pocahontas does. She runs up the cliff to say goodbye to John. And he says goodbye to her in one of the greatest endings of all time when it comes to a film. Oh my God, this ending was beautiful. But at the end of the day, it's obvious when she says goodbye to him, this is not going to break her. Even though she loves him, it's not going to break her. She's going to keep going on, doing her thing, and keep trying to help the world she's in. That is powerful stuff, man. Powerful stuff. There's life after a relationship does not work out. She'll keep her love for him inside of her at all times, but she will keep going. And she's going to keep being optimistic. This man that she loved, he is one portion of her life that she will never regret. She will always have a fond memory of. But she's still Pocahontas. She was Pocahontas before John Smith. She has the right to be Pocahontas after John Smith. And I know it's not accurate to the way it was in real life. But again, like I said before, pick up a history book and educate yourself, and even then realize, wait a minute, we don't have the real story of Pocahontas until we get a first-person account of what happened to Pocahontas in her own life. There's always something about her we will not know. But educate yourself and understand this is a movie that is to entertain and to introduce children to Pocahontas and give very good messages that children need to hear, that we did not get in Disney before, in many films before. You have to try to see that. Pocahontas was a great role model. I don't know why people don't notice that. I don't know why. So, on to my next bit of criticism. Okay. What was Pocahontas really like? We don't know. People are also, again, criticizing Pocahontas for not being like this. What is Pocahontas like? How do you know what she's like? No, answer me. Do you know what she's like? And also, when it comes to, again, I'm going to address the idea of this being inaccurate and therefore being offensive. Okay, what you have to see is Disney deals in fairy tales. That's what Disney does. It does fairy tales. And then it does variations of those fairy tales. You know, a lot of things they do, they took a fairy tale and they built on it. They didn't create Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella. They didn't create these. They took them already and they built upon them. And same with Pinocchio. They built on these things. They built on them. And then they changed the fairy tale for them to be more kid-friendly. Though Pinocchio scares the crap out of me. Ooh. Same with Snow White. Ooh. Scary. Sorry. I'm back. Sorry. Oh, Snow White is scary. Sorry. I'm back. Either way, yes. They deal in fairy tales. And that's what you gotta look at Pocahontas as. The movie Pocahontas. This is a fairy tale of the real life, of the story of the real woman, Pocahontas. This is giving a fairy tale version of what should have happened to her. She should have had John Smith who loved and respected her. She should have had, people who saw what she was trying to do. She probably had this great spirit, or this, or this. She should have been revered and respected the way any woman or man should be respected and treated fairly and just treated well. But no, the real Pocahontas was probably kidnapped and raped multiple times, and there's even now some theories going around that she was possibly poisoned when she was going back to America after leaving England, because now she served her purpose for the propaganda John Rolfe was trying to promote. Is that the message you want to send to kids? By being an innocent woman and being kidnapped, captured, tortured, molested, raped, abused. That's all there is to life? No, you want kids to believe that goodness will be rewarded, that there's hope. That you need kids to have faith in something. Pocahontas, you need kids to believe that by being a good person, they will be rewarded. Yes, life is not fair, but kids need to feel that. They need that message to become what they need to be when they get older, rather than sour, cynical, disgusting people. Pocahontas gave you that, but also Pocahontas gave the real Pocahontas the story she deserved. Not the story she got, but the story she deserved. She deserved to be loved. She deserved to have a fairy tale about her. She deserved to be remembered. And there's now a movie honoring and remembering her and giving her the fairy tale that the colonists did not give her. We can't go back in time and save Pocahontas from all the crap that happened to her. We can't go back in time and do that. But what we can do is give her a movie celebrating her and giving her the happy ending in the story she deserved. That's what we can give her. Now, that's what Pocahontas did for me as a person. I'm not telling you to think these things, but that's what she did to me as a person. And if you're still going out there saying, well, you're missing the point, is politically incorrect for this reason or another reason, I'm not going to ask you what you think. I want to ask Native Americans, indigenous people, people who are this demographic. They are Native American, indigenous people, Native Americans. What did you think about Pocahontas, her portrayal in this film? And because, you're the ones who actually know about this stuff, not only know about this stuff, but you're the one who this pertains to. What do you feel? Because we sometimes speak for you rather than letting you speak for yourselves. And I understand if you do not like this movie, but you as a non-Native American person or a Native American person or an Indian or indigenous person, you have the right to not like it, of course, but I wish you to respect why I do like it for all the reasons that I mentioned. I do. That's all I'm asking. And when it comes to this movie, those people who find it offensive because it's not politically correct, because it is historically inaccurate, I want to know where the idea comes from, why you're so upset about this. You let Braveheart pass and many other historically inaccurate movies pass, but you'll attack this one. And I wondered why. And I was like, well, does it have to do with the fact that, it's Native Americans, and are you all suffering from white guilt? Like, because I don't know the reason. I'm trying to find out why there was such a vehement and hostile reaction to this particular film. And I'm wondering, is it white guilt? White people, you feel guilty about what happened to the Native Americans when the colonists came over from Europe and came over from other parts of the world. And they colonized here and they completely trampled and destroyed the indigenous people and ruined them in a horribly disgusting, genocidal way. It was repulsive, and you feel guilty, so you must defend them at all cost. I'm wondering if that's where it's coming from. If it is, I understand that impulse. But it's like everything else in this world, everything in moderation. And what I mean by that is, I thank you so much for having white guilt. I understand why it's important to have it. And I admit, I don't know what you guys are going through when you're going through it. White guilt is something I sympathize with you for having. I know it's hard to have it, but I'll never understand what you guys are going through, if that's what this is about, if that's what sparked this hatred for Pocahontas. I don't know the real reason. I'm just speculating that might have been the main reason, is white guilt. I can only assume it's maybe the feeling you guys get when it comes to white guilt is the same feeling I got when I was called a nigger a couple times by, white people. I was called nigger a couple times. And that anger, that animosity to defend yourself and be very hurt. And I'm wondering if that's what, white people go through when they're experiencing white guilt. I don't know what you guys are going through. And so I understand why you want to defend the politically correct stance of this is historically inaccurate, so we must hate this because we're not being sensitive to the Native Americans. But I think it's like everything else when it comes to a movement or a stance. You're so quick to attack something or to defend something you think you're defending that you went overboard with it. And you ended up being harsher than you not only did you need to be, but you ended up not seeing certain messages you need to see. I would recommend with this movie saying to people, okay, now, remember, everyone, this is a historically inaccurate movie. Go research the original Pocahontas or the best or the history that we have now. It might not be accurate, but at least try to educate yourself. But understand this is still a movie that is celebrating the woman Pocahontas. She's a great role model, and there's some great messages in this movie, and we should respect all the effort that went into this because a lot of really good effort went into this. I'm only speculating with this, that's what you're going through, but that's something I think we should do when it comes to this movie. Address that it's historically inaccurate, but still see all the good in it. And that comes to my last argument. When I was in college, I actually wrote, I'm amazed I kept a notebook, I wrote down an essay about why I did not hate this movie. It was like, there was like this assignment in class of why do you like something that often is hated? And I was talking about the various degrees of good and bad. I hear a lot of people say this is a flat-out bad movie. Okay, if you think it's not perfect, fine. But this is something I see in the world in general, where things are either very good, and they're excellent and perfect, or they're absolutely terrible. And there's no in-between. When I wrote this, and I was, eventually I typed it up. I'm just writing, I hand-wrote things first sometimes back then. Because you can't keep a computer on you, but you can keep a notebook. So I'm going to give you my thoughts about this when it came to Pocahontas and then relating it to the world in general. Talking about varying degrees of good and bad. I find it toxic when I see reviewers from real life to YouTube who just regard this film Pocahontas as bad. Because they're not addressing anything that is in between. They see life as extremes. Either something is perfect or something is awful. But there are varying degrees. There are things that are perfect, that are very, very, very good, that are pretty good, to average, to not great, to absolutely atrocious and bad. There are varying degrees of these things. We're now in a world, when it comes to people who hate things like Pocahontas, we're now in a world where there is too much extremity of mindset. Either things are perfect or they're absolutely terrible. And I've seen this with reviewers on YouTube and in everyday discussion. I cannot agree with them. And to those people from YouTube reviewers, to those people I shall meet in an everyday debate, you'll be popular at what you do. Yes, you will. But you'll never be good at what you do. See, you give the people what they want. Because seeing things in black and white is simple. People hate looking at things in shades of gray. And watching a reviewer, be it on YouTube or on TV, tear something to shreds for some reason is fun. Because for a lot of us, hate is a fun emotion to feel. Hate, for some reason, is a very fun emotion to feel. But one day, your audience will get older, and they will realize that you lied to them. You showed them the singularity of mindset, that things are either awesome or terrible. But life does not work out like that. Life is complicated. Life is not always in black and white. Life is in shades of gray. Life is in shades of perfect, amazingly, almost good, almost perfect, really, really good, pretty good, not so good, very much not good, to bad. There are different levels that we can grade things. Life is complicated. And since there are various degrees of good and bad, but you're teaching people to only see either things in perfection or awful, that extremity of mindset is going to haunt them in life because they'll judge everything that way. They'll miss out on relationships that could have been excellent because the man or woman they were dating was not perfect. They'll miss out on a great book because it's not perfect. They'll miss out on an excellent film with great messages because it was not perfect. They'll hate blindly because something is not perfect. And they're going to make so many mistakes. And then they're going to realize it was you who taught them that extremity of mindset. And they will not thank you. One day, your audience will grow up. And they will leave you behind. So those reviewers from YouTube to life who just hate this movie without seeing any of the good in it. Yes, you'll be popular at what you do. And I will not be. I will never be popular at what I do. But I promise you this. Despite all your popularity, you will never be good at what you do. So guys, those are some of my reasons for why I love this movie, and I respect those who disagree with me. This is my videos just defending this movie that I think is actually very good. Again, I respect you for disagreeing with me, but I had to give my piece. I had to. I just can't stand by any longer and let people think this movie is just pure crap. I can't do that. I can do that no longer. So thank you guys so much for watching my video. God knows you didn't have to do it, and it went on longer than I wanted it to. But thank you guys so much again for watching, and I hope to see you guys again very soon. Peace out, guys.